Okay, the next step in decorating the pot is to do the carving that I want to do. There are innumerable ways to decorate a pottery. And this, I'm just going to be showing you one way that I do the decoration. I use a number of tools to do this. I have natural leaves and cookie cutters and pieces of wood, shells, things like that that I use with my clay. I also have a number of different clay tools that I use to decorate the clay. Everybody decorates their final pot in a different way, and that's why there's so much variety in what pottery ends up looking like. This pot is going to have a carved leaf pattern on it. It'll be 6 leaves, so I first need to kind of map out the pot and determine where the leaves are going to be. So again, I have a real scientific tool. It's a Mountain High yogurt container that I've marked different lines around the edge of it, and I just use this to mark off the different divisions of the pot. So I'm going to divide it into 6ths around the pot. Okay, so there's the basic 6ths, and then I'll divide each of these into quarters so I can gauge how the leaves flow around the pot. Okay, now I'm using a tool that has a very fine, it's a wire tool, has a fine point on it to carve the initial design. You have to be aware of the thickness of the pot as you're doing this. You don't want to carve so deeply that you actually carve through the wall of the pot. Okay, and now I'll switch to a different tool that has a square end in the wire to make a different type of carving. So now you see there's a lot of kind of crumbles of clay. And I want to get those off before I sponge everything smooth. So I take a brush that has real stiff bristles and just brush away some of the crumbles. Okay, that's good enough. So now I want to smooth this. There's a lot of rough edges and I want to smooth it so it's nice and smooth when you feel it. So this is where I take my sponge and just go over the carving. This takes off any other little rough crumbles and smooths the edges of the carving. Okay, and that's good. That's cleaned it up considerably. Okay, so I have a theory when I make my pots that I like to have them look beautiful and interesting from all angles. And so right now we have a nice finished foot and we have a very interesting outside of the pot. But what are we going to do to the rest of the pot? So this is where I have to flip the pot over so I can do some decoration on the inside of the pot and on the lip of the pot. Okay, so I'll put another bat on top and just flip it over. Again, I didn't want to pick it up because I might distort the shape of the pot. So now we have the top edge of the pot. And I like to finish this so it looks a little roughly like the edge of a leaf. So I'll take a knife, small knife, and start cutting the edge of the pot. Then I'm going to cut the back part here a little bit more too. Okay, so you can see it's starting to look a little roughly. Again, there's quite a sharp edge around all this, so I'll go around and smooth off the edge a little bit with the knife. Okay, and now the final smoothing will be with the sponge. Okay, all right, so now the edge is smooth. So that's an interesting edge on the piece, but what about the inside? You can see the inside of the pot is kind of bland looking right now. So I do a little bit of carving on the inside too. So it's kind of an abstract flower design that I put in there. I don't like to put it right in the center of the pot because that can be a little boring too. So I put it off to the side a little bit. And then I don't want to make the carving too thick because you're thinking this is used for food and you don't want the carving to be too deep so that food would get stuck in it. So when the pot is finally fired, you can hardly even feel this carving, but the glaze knows that the carving is there and will pool in it, so it ends up being a white on white design on the inside of the pot. Take the square-ended tool have to smooth it with the sponge. Okay, so now that adds a little bit of design on the inside. And the final step with this is to make the lip a little bit ruffly. So I'll just go around the edge. It's still very flexible. And turn some of it in, turn some of it out to make the edge a little bit ruffly. There we go. So that's the final shape. So at this point then, the bowl needs to dry and dry completely. And it's important to remember that as a pot dries, it shrinks. And so you want to try to dry the pot evenly so that there's not undue stress put on the pot while it's drying. So the best way for a bowl to dry is actually turned upside down on its rim, so it'll dry completely from all angles on the outside. If I left it this way to dry, the rim would dry very quickly and the bottom would still be wet, and that puts a lot of stress on the piece. So I'm going to let this rim stabilize just a little bit because it's still quite soft from all the sponge work that I've done. But once it's a little bit harder, then I'll flip the pot over to dry completely.